The hostess stand gleamed under the soft golden lights, but the smile behind it didn't reach Greg's eyes. He looked Marcus and Alana over in one quick, dismissive scan, from Marcus's tailored navy blazer to Alana's sleek black dress, then tilted his head slightly as if he were about to tell them the restaurant was closed. "Can I help you?" His tone was sharp enough to cut. "Yes," Marcus replied evenly. "Reservation for Williams, 7:30. Greg tapped at the screen without looking up. Williams, here it is." His lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Surprised. Alana's eyes narrowed. Surprised? Greg shrugged. "Nothing. Just not who I expected. Follow me." The dining room stretched out in front of them, all polished wood, crystal glassware, and murmured conversations. Yet Greg didn't lead them toward the center, where the soft candlelight made everyone look like they belonged on magazine covers. Instead, he steered them to a cramped table tucked near the swinging kitchen doors, where the clang of pans drowned out the violin music. "This all right?" he asked, already placing menus down. Marcus hesitated, then Saturday, "Fine." Greg handed them menus without making eye contact, lingering just long enough to add, "Water's free. Just in case you were wondering." Alana's jaw tightened. Marcus reached for her hand under the table, a silent "let's not make a scene." Minutes passed. No water. No bread basket like the other tables had. Greg passed their table twice without stopping, laughing with another couple as he poured them wine. When he finally returned, his notepad in hand, he leaned on the table as though doing them a favor. "So, what'll it be?" Marcus closed his menu. "We'll start with the burgundy bottle, please." Greg's eyebrow lifted. "That's $2.50 a bottle." "You sure?" Alana's fingers gripped the table's edge. "Yes, we're sure." Greg scribbled something, muttering, "Your call," before disappearing again. The wine took 15 minutes. The pour was sloppy, drops staining the pristine white tablecloth. When Marcus asked for the chef's recommendation on the main course, Greg smirked. "I mean, maybe the pasta? It's cheaper. Don't want you to be surprised when the bill comes." Marcus's face stayed calm, but his voice was colder. "We'll take the porterhouse. Medium rare. And the duck for my wife." By the time Greg left, Alana exhaled. "Why are we letting him talk to us like this?" Marcus's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Because, my love, some lessons are best taught after dessert." She blinked at him, unsure what he meant. Across the room, Greg was laughing with the bartender, throwing a glance their way as though the joke were about them. Marcus caught it and said nothing. "Not yet." By the time the appetizers arrived, Marcus and Alana had already become the unspoken curiosity of the room. It wasn't their clothes. Marcus's blazer looked freshly pressed. Alana's diamond studs caught the light every time she moved. It wasn't their conversation either. They spoke in quiet, measured tones. It was Greg. Every time he came to their table, his voice lifted just enough for nearby diners to hear, as if he were putting on a performance. "Here you go," he announced, setting down Marcus's plate of scallops with a thud, causing the sauce to splash. "Chef special. Not sure if you're into this kind of thing, but it's one of our pricier starters." Alana kept her eyes on her fork. She'd learned long ago that some people fed off the reaction they got. Marcus simply nodded. "Thank you." Greg stood there for a beat too long. "Anything else? You want me to bring the bill early? Sometimes people prefer." "We'll let you know," Marcus said, cutting him off. Greg finally walked away, but not before tossing a look at the table beside them. Two men in expensive suits, and rolling his eyes dramatically. The men frowned at Greg, then glanced apologetically at Marcus and Alana. "Marcus," Alana's voice was low. "I'm serious. He's humiliating us in front of everyone." "I know," Marcus replied, calmly cutting into his scallop. "And I promise you, this is the last time he'll ever treat anyone like this." Her brows drew together. "What are you?" Before she could finish, Greg returned, this time holding a bottle of wine by the neck like it was a jug. "So, Burgundy, right? Here's your vintage. Nice pick. Real fancy." He drew out the word, his grin wide and sarcastic. Marcus gestured to the glasses. "You can pour." Greg poured without care, filling Marcus's glass to the brim while barely splashing a mouthful into Alana's. "Oops," he said, wiping a drop from the lip of the bottle with his bare hand. "Guess I'll even it out later." Alana set her napkin down. "I'd like to speak to your manager." Greg straightened, feigning surprise. "Oh, the manager? Is there a problem?" "Yes," she said plainly. "You." Greg's smirk didn't fade. "Right. Well, he's busy. I'll let him know you're unhappy." He dragged out the last word, then sauntered toward the bar, whispering something to the bartender that earned a laugh. A nearby couple, an older white pair, leaned toward Marcus. "We're so sorry you're being treated like this," the woman said softly. "We've been coming here for years and I've never seen anything like it." Marcus smiled politely. "Thank you. But we'll handle it." When Greg came back with the entrees, his voice was louder than before. "Here we go, the porterhouse. That's $65 just so we're all clear." The clink of cutlery in the room paused. Someone at the bar muttered, "What's his problem?" Greg set the plate down hard enough that Marcus's knife rattled. "And the duck? Hope you like it medium-ish, 'cause that's how the kitchen sent it out." Marcus finally looked up, meeting Greg's eyes with a calm that seemed to unsettle the waiter. "We'll see how it tastes." Greg lingered, as if expecting a complaint he could argue against. When none came, he huffed and walked away. Alana leaned forward. "You're scaring me. You're too calm." Marcus's smile returned, slow and deliberate. "Because, sweetheart, dinner's not over yet. And neither is the lesson." She stared at him for a long moment, unsure whether to be angry, impressed, or worried. But when he raised his glass and clinked it gently against hers, there was a glint in his eyes that told her whatever he had planned, Greg wouldn't see it coming. The porterhouse was cooked perfectly. The duck too. Not that either Marcus or Alana tasted much of it. The flavor was lost beneath the thick air of Greg's attitude, his sidelong glances, and his smirks at the bar. Alana pushed her plate away. "Marcus, I don't care what your plan is. This has gone far enough. I'm done." Marcus dabbed his mouth with his napkin, eyes never leaving Greg as the waiter flirted with a pair of women near the entrance. "Almost," he said quietly. "One more course." The dessert menu landed on their table with a slap. "You guys want something sweet, or should we wrap this up before you max out the card?" Greg said, loud enough for the next table to hear. The nearby couple gasped. Alana's lips parted, but Marcus's hand on hers kept her seated. "Chocolate souffle," Marcus said, voice smooth as glass. "And 2 espressos." Greg scribbled, muttering, "Sure thing, big spender." When he was out of earshot, Alana's whisper was sharp. "Marcus, trust me." The souffle arrived without flourish, dropped on the table as if Greg were tossing a frisbee. He didn't even set the espressos in front of them, just slid them across until the cups clinked against the plates. "Enjoy," he said flatly. Marcus set his fork down after one bite. "Greg," he called. The waiter turned, still wearing that smirk. "Yeah." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "We'd like to speak to the owner." Greg chuckled. "I told you earlier he's not here. But hey, you can always email the business. I'm sure they'll love to hear your thoughts." Marcus's smile deepened, slow and deliberate. "No need for an email. The owner is sitting right here." Greg frowned. "What?" Marcus reached into his blazer and pulled out a sleek leather folder. Inside, the top document bore the restaurant's name in bold, the Silver Finch, and a set of signatures dated that very morning. "My wife and I," Marcus said, flipping the page toward him, "finalized the purchase today. As of noon, this restaurant belongs to us." A hush fell over the room. Conversations halted. Forks froze midair. Greg's smirk vanished. "You're joking." Alana leaned forward, her voice calm but edged with steel. "Do we look like we're joking?" The bartender had stopped polishing glasses. The couple in the suits leaned forward, clearly enjoying the shift in power. Marcus stood, tucking the folder under his arm. "Greg, I've spent the last hour watching you turn this dining room into your stage for humiliation. You've disrespected us, embarrassed paying customers, and in the process, shown exactly why change was needed here." Greg's voice faltered. I was just... Just what?" Marcus asked, stepping closer. "Testing if we belonged here? Seeing how far you could go." The waiter's gaze darted toward the manager, who was now standing stiff by the bar, saying nothing. "Well," Marcus continued, "here's the good news. You don't have to worry about serving us again. You don't have to worry about serving anyone here." The words landed like a gavel. "You're terminated," Marcus said simply. A ripple of shock ran through the room. Then, from somewhere near the back, a few hands began to clap. The sound grew, diners leaning in to watch as Greg's face flushed red. "You can collect your last check from payroll," Alana added, her voice cool. "And on your way out, take a good look around. This will be a very different place tomorrow, one where every single customer gets respect." Greg muttered something under his breath, but his voice was swallowed by the applause. With one last glare, he grabbed his apron, yanked it off, and shoved it onto the hostess stand before storming out. When the door swung shut behind him, Marcus returned to the table, lifted his espresso, and smiled at the watching diners. "Welcome," he said warmly, "to the new Silver Finch." The applause swelled again, this time joined by a few cheers. And for the first time that evening, Alana smiled, not because the meal was good, but because justice had been served. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the Silver Finch's tall windows, catching the fresh flowers on every table. The dining room looked the same as it had the night before, same polished wood, same soft golden lighting, but the atmosphere was different. For one, Greg was gone. Marcus stood near the entrance, greeting the morning shift as they came in. A few of the staff looked cautious, unsure whether the rumors flying around last night were true. Others, especially the kitchen crew, wore small smiles of approval. Alana sat at one of the corner tables, reviewing the new menu they'd worked on for months. "Morning, boss," said Lila, the sous chef, wiping her hands on her apron as she approached Marcus. "Heard about last night? Can't say I'll miss him." Marcus smiled. "You won't have to. From now on, this is a place people want to work in and eat in." It had taken Marcus years to get here. Long before the tailored suits and business meetings, he was a dishwasher in a small diner in Atlanta, earning minimum wage and sneaking peeks into the kitchen whenever the chef plated a dish. He learned quickly, not just about food but about people. He saw how certain customers were treated differently, depending on the color of their skin, their clothes, or the assumptions of the staff. He promised himself two things back then. He'd own his own place one day, and secondly, no one would ever leave it feeling small. After putting himself through culinary school by working nights and weekends, Marcus became a chef, then a restaurant consultant. He had a knack for spotting what made a business thrive, and what made it rot from the inside. His investments grew one smart deal at a time. When a business broker told him the Silver Finch was for sale, Marcus recognized the opportunity immediately. It was the type of place that could be extraordinary, but it needed new leadership. He signed the papers at noon the day before, and decided to have dinner there that same night, just to see how the staff operated when they didn't know the new owner was watching. Greg's performance had given him his answer. Now, standing in the same spot where Greg had mocked him hours earlier, Marcus felt that quiet satisfaction that comes from keeping a promise to yourself. "All right, everyone," he called out to the staff. "Quick meeting before we open." The waiters, hosts, and kitchen crew gathered near the bar. Marcus's voice was calm but firm. "Some of you know me from the industry. Some of you don't. But here's all you need to know. Respect is our #1 ingredient here. Doesn't matter who walks through those doors. Rich, poor, young, old, everyone gets treated like they belong. Because they do." A few heads nodded. Even the manager from the night before, who had been too nervous to step in, looked relieved. "Also," Marcus added, "the table by the kitchen? That's now the VIP section. No one gets shoved in a corner here again." A ripple of laughter broke the tension. Alana closed her menu and joined him at the front. "Let's open the doors," she said, slipping her arm through his. As the first customers walked in, Marcus greeted them with the warmth he wished someone had given him years ago. The Silver Finch had a new heartbeat, and it started with him. 6 months later, the Silver Finch was unrecognizable. The stiff, pretentious atmosphere that once clung to the place like stale perfume had been replaced by a warmth that wrapped around guests the moment they stepped inside. Laughter mingled with the gentle hum of conversation. The smell of freshly baked bread drifted from the open kitchen. Every table was full. On a Saturday night, reservations were booked weeks in advance. The restaurant had been featured in 2 food magazines, not for the fanciest dishes, though the menu was still sophisticated, but for its commitment to hospitality. Customers described it as a place where you feel welcome before you've even sat down. Marcus stood at the edge of the dining room, scanning the crowd. A young couple in jeans and sneakers were seated near the center, clinking glasses over dessert. An elderly woman, dining alone, smiled as a waiter, one of the new hires, placed a complimentary slice of pie in front of her. Alana slipped beside him. "Remember our first night here?" He chuckled. "Hard to forget." She smirked. "Greg certainly won't." They didn't talk about Greg much anymore. Last they'd heard, he'd moved to another city. Marcus bore him no ill will. Some people learn lessons the hard way. Tonight, though, was special. A small sign near the entrance announced Community Appreciation Night. Half the proceeds would go to fund scholarships for young culinary students from underrepresented backgrounds. Marcus had already promised to personally mentor 2 of them. "Table 5 is asking for you," Alana said. Marcus glanced over to see a familiar older couple, the ones who'd leaned toward him on that tense first night to apologize for Greg's behavior. They waved him over. "We just wanted to say thank you," the woman said. "This place, it's completely different. It's not just the food. It's the way people feel here." "That's the goal," Marcus replied, smiling. "Everyone who walks in belongs here." He meant it. As the night wound down, Marcus took one last walk through the dining room, greeting diners, shaking hands and laughing with regulars. When he reached the front door, he paused to look out at the street, the glow from the restaurant spilling onto the sidewalk like a promise. 6 months ago, this was just another business deal. Now it was something far greater. A community hub, a safe space, and a daily reminder that dignity was worth protecting. Marcus locked the door and turned to Alana. "Ready to go home?" She glanced back at the now quiet dining room. "This is home." They stepped into the cool night, hand in hand, leaving the silver finch to rest until the next day, when the doors would open again, and the cycle of welcome, respect, and good food would start all over. If this story touched your heart, remember, sometimes the smallest steps lead to the biggest changes. Subscribe and join us for more stories that prove compassion can change the world.